everybody. It's Suzanne A. Wells, and welcome to episode number 46 of eBay the Right Way. Today's date is February 2nd, 2022. Today's guest is Eileen Cole, who is known on the Facebook group as the Book Lady, but she sells other things too. But she's going to give us a good education on selling books, what to look for, what she's had success with, and all that great information that can help you if you're not looking at the book section in the thrift store, estate sale, garage sales, wherever you go. You may be leaving money on the table. Before we get into the chat, let's do a quick calendar check-in. We're going to jump ahead to February 6th. The task is grab 5 items from your death pile and list them today. They could sell immediately. And when you do that task, make sure you check it off. I'm going to help you tackle those death piles. And that's part of what this calendar is about, is being your accountability partner to help you focus and buckle down and get things done. So there are specific tasks on specific days, and when you do them, you can check them off and feel accomplished. Okay, let's get into the chat with Eileen. Okay, we have Eileen with us today. And Eileen, where are you located?
I'm in Annapolis, Maryland.
So you had some snow recently.
We did. We had, like 6 or 8 inches a couple weeks ago, and then a few more inches earlier this week, but it's mostly gone now.
Okay. And today's date is Saturday, January 22nd. So we are right smack dab in the middle of winter. I've just been seeing a lot of snow pictures on Facebook.
Yep.
Of, the huge amounts people are getting. And it's like, yeah, we're in Georgia. We don't get that.
Well, this was the year we decided we were buying a snowblower. So we did.
Oh, good investment.
Yep.
And so have you played with that yet?
Yeah. The first snow, though, was so heavy and so wet. It did an okay job, but I'm told everybody's snowblowers was like that. But the second one, it was nice. It was powder. It was great.
Okay, good. All right. And we had a chat on YouTube back in 2018. So it's been almost 4 years.
Was it 18 or was it 19?
I'll check that. I'll check that and enter it and make sure that's correct. But I remember doing a whole bunch of them in 2018. So I'll get the correct date on that. But anyway, it's been a while.
Yeah.
And you specialize in books, but you also sell a lot of other things. So listeners, don't click away, because she's not only going to be talking about books. There's a lot of good information here. Let's start with how you got started on eBay.
Okay. I actually started on Etsy in 2017. I collect 1950s printed colorful tablecloths. 1950s. And I amassed a very large collection and decided I'd better start thinning that out. So I started on Etsy, and then I love vintage, and I had a lot of impulse buys of vintage stuff over the years and thought, I'm not using this. It's stuck in a box. So I started selling that stuff on Etsy. Okay. And then I think it was early 2019. I had gallbladder surgery and was recovering and just watching YouTube videos, and came across a bunch of sellers on eBay. And I realized eBay offered a whole lot more opportunity. So I decided to dive into eBay as well. But the other reason I started selling on eBay is because I didn't share this with you last time you spoke with me, but for most of my adult life, I've had a mystery illness, very much like your daughter, a mystery illness that had all kinds of weird symptoms, but the main one was fatigue. And at times it was absolutely debilitating. So I had built up a really good freelance writing business in a very specialized field, and I did great with that. But a few years ago, it got to the point where I was worried about missing deadlines. And I just felt like I had so much brain fog, and so I thought I can't do this anymore. But I knew I could sell online, because you do that according to your own schedule, and the only deadline you have to meet is the shipping deadline. So I moved into that, and then and that was wonderful. It was great because I love it so much, and it kept me energized, it kept me engaged. And then in early 21, we finally figured out what one of the major underlying issues was, after decades. Got that treated, and I'm feeling like a new person. So I've never ever remember feeling this good in my entire life. So
good for you.
Yeah.
And you were right. I just was looking up the date of our YouTube chat, and it was September of 19. So
okay, yeah.
Thank you for correcting me on that.
Sure. So eBay has been a wonderful business. When you don't feel well, when life happens, when you're doing other things. And now I call it my money-making hobby.
So you started with vintage tablecloths because that's what you love.
Exactly.
And then you branched out into other things.
Yeah.
Okay. And what prompted you to try different things?
I started with, like a lot of people, with what I had around the house. So especially on Etsy, just trying to cull my collection. And then I've just always loved going to thrift stores. And after I watched all those YouTube videos, recovering from surgery, I just realized I should be looking at everything. And in my area, there about every 6 weeks, there's my favorite charity used book sale, as I always say on the threads. And that happens every 6 weeks. And my husband and I would go to all of them because we're such big readers and we have our own vast personal library. And it occurred to me, that I could buy for resale there. So that's how I got into books. And then I just developed other interests, like I love ephemera, old slides, old paper of any kind. And I don't do as much of it as I'd like, but I'm getting into it more. So, and then I would sell stuff around the house that I wasn't using anymore, like an old wine rack or an old dish or something. So, you just, over time, you just branch out and you realize the potential.
Right. And you have that kind of brain that says, well, if this worked, what about this thing over here? I'm going to try that, because the worst that can happen is it doesn't sell.
Yeah. I mean, I went through a couple of months where I was selling one of my kids' old toys, and made a lot of money that way, made a lot of money from his old Nintendo Power magazines that he almost put in the recycle. So yeah, I mean, look around you.
Oh, that's right. Those old magazines, those are worth money.
Yep.
It's everywhere. People used to say, I can't find anything to sell. And I'm like, well, then you're not looking. Yep. Or they have a mindset of like, it has to be this kind of thing, the Yadro collectibles that are 30 years old, or those kind of things that are just obvious. But you start, I think it was Amy Decker said, don't go for the obvious.
Yeah.
I love that. It's like the weirder or the more mundane or practical. Sometimes those things sell for a lot.
Yes. Yeah. I remember going to thrift stores when I first started in 2019 and feeling like I wasn't finding anything. But it's a skill. You develop it over time. And you start looking everything up, and you eventually develop some specialties, and you stuff. So
how many things do you have in your inventory
right now? I'm at about 465.
Mm-hmm. Do you have
almost getting to 500, and then I'll drop down again. So
yeah, like a monkey climbing out of a well. It's like you're almost there, you slip back.
Yeah, but I don't necessarily feel like I have to get there. So
right, yeah, it's just like a personal goal. Like, I wonder if I could do this.
Right.
And do you keep a death pile, or do you keep stuff?
I have a big death pile.
So I need to come to your house too and shop your death pile.
Well, I have what I call the good death pile and the bad death pile. The bad death pile is all the garbage I bought on impulse that I get home and I think, oh, that's so big, that's bulky, that's breakable. Do I want to ship that? Why did I buy that? And then the good death pile is really deliberate purchases of bulk inventory that don't take up a lot of space, that it's a category I want to learn. So I had the opportunity to buy, I'm thinking like 6 big shoe boxes full of vintage postcards for $20. That was a no-brainer. So, that takes up space, but that's going to teach me the category. I bought
the next time you have a snowstorm or a blizzard, that's what you're going to be doing. Those postcards.
I bought 20 cases of 35 millimeter slides from an estate sale right before lockdown. And I'm still working through that and learning on that. So that was, again, a deliberate inventory purchase that I knew I would learn the category, and then just work on that over time. So that's what I call the good death pile.
Yeah, I would love to find ephemera like that, but we just don't have the estate sales here that other people have in other states. Or they're an hour away, and I'm just like, but I'm gonna pass 8 Goodwills on the way to that estate sale. So
yeah, and here the Goodwills are terrible. So everybody's area is so different.
And we have a recycling center in my community, and I'm waiting. One day I did find a bunch of ledgers, like maybe somebody died and they just dumped their stuff in there to be recycled. And it was those old green notebook ledgers with the striped green paper, and
those are so cool.
The handwriting was all the entries of whatever it was. And the handwriting was beautiful. And I did pick up a couple of those just to see, would anybody want to buy this? Because I really think that beautiful penmanship is going to be more collectible as we go along, because people just don't do it anymore.
It's going to be the secret code how us old folks communicate.
Yeah, and it already is, because I'll write a note to one of my kids and, write something in cursive, and they're like, I don't know what that says. And it's not like I'm a sloppy writer. It's just, they didn't really learn it in school.
Wow.
It was all focused on computers and learning PowerPoint. Now they can help me with some computer stuff, but it's sad that they don't have that skill. I remember my, aunts, uncles, grandparents sending birthday cards and just their beautiful penmanship inside. And I wish I had saved those just to see it. I mean, I have a few, but that I think is really going to be a dying art. Recipe books where it's all handwritten, you've got the little splatters of food on it. Like, this really was grandma's biscuit recipe.
Have you seen what those handwritten recipes go for on eBay? I mean, they are really something.
I haven't checked lately. What are they going for?
If you can get a big enough lot, anywhere from $50 to $400, just depends on how big the lot is and how old it is and if it's all handwritten. So I've been like picking up here and there, but I just have like an inch stack. That's all I've got so far. So it's not worth selling yet, but I dream of finding a haul of that.
Well, and I have a prediction here that I think we're going to see a resurgence of handwritten things, more thank you notes in the mail, snail mail stuff, because I personally love getting it. I love getting a note from a friend that's handwritten.
Yes.
And I don't want to do everything on the computer. It's very different when you're handwriting a thank you note or a card. The energy that comes through when you're doing that is very different than sitting at a computer just banging it out on the on the keyboard as fast as you can go. It's a very different vibe. So I see, there's Vistaprint and all these companies and Etsy where you can get your stationery designed and all these things. And I think that might come back because I think people miss snail mail.
I agree.
Yeah, us old people anyway. Well, even my daughter, she's going to be 28 this month, and she loves getting stuff in the mail. She and her friends just mail stuff back and forth because it's fun to get a package that, isn't Amazon dropping it at your door. It's something personal. So we'll see how that goes. But I haven't come across any of those recipe files or books, handwritten recipe books. I always look for them, but maybe one day.
Yeah.
I've also seen you being successful with brass.
Yes. And in fact, that reminds me, I have to put another lot up there. Yeah, I learned, I don't know, a couple of years ago that if you can get enough of those old brass candlesticks and put them in a lot, people want them for weddings. So I could find them pretty regularly for $1 a pop. And then I did the math on it. And you can, if you have a big enough lot, let's say you have like 25 in a lot or more, you can get a return of $4 to $7 per every dollar you put into it. So every time I would see one, I'd grab it, throw it in a box, and when I have enough, I'll put another lot up on eBay.
Yeah, I was very interested when I saw that, and you were like, yeah, these sell. I don't know why, and then you came back with people are using them for weddings. Yes. And they want them to look a little rustic, not perfectly polished, right. That farmhouse style.
Exactly.
That is primitive, I guess. So that was fun. But along those same lines, the mason jars, bell jars, mason jars, ball canning jars, those are now hard to find. And what happened was over Christmas, I make this fudge sauce I send to a select few in my circle. And I could not find those jars anywhere. Wow. And like the grocery stores were out of them, and Amazon, it was just insanely expensive. Like, I'm not paying that. I see these at Goodwill all the time. And, you just sterilize them and buy the new lids. But I was like, what is the deal with the shortage of jars? So a couple things on that is those are also used for weddings, where they put a ribbon around it and maybe some water and a floating votive inside, and then or flowers or whatever. That's a big wedding thing now. Are those?
Yeah, they're all over Pinterest. Yeah.
Yes. So, and with COVID, more cooking at home.
Yeah.
And canning your own stuff.
Yep.
So I've started getting those when I see them at Goodwill, like the big ones that are $1. And I'm thinking I could use them, or I can sell those because they are really getting scarce. And what a weird thing.
They're breakable.
Well, I know they're breakable, but they are sturdy. So it's not something super fragile because they're thick. And like the small ones, the pint size. Anyway, I'm kind of experimenting with picking those up because they're like 50 cents at Goodwill.
I never thought of that, but that's a phenomenal idea. Yeah.
So we'll see if A, they sell, and B, if I like shipping them.
Yeah.
I mean, you could just put two together. You don't have to do a case size of 16 or whatever.
Yeah.
But, it's just something all the time that now there's a shortage of this.
Yes.
So you have to, my ears perk up whenever I hear somebody anywhere say, I can't find that. And I'm like, what is it? What are you talking about? Because that's what I'm going to start looking for. Yep. Okay. So let's talk about some of your notable sales over time, either something really weird you were shocked that sold, or something that sold for a really high price.
The highest price one I sold was right at the beginning, and it wasn't my thing. It was my husband's thing. He had bought a nice ham radio set up from a flea market for $10, played with it for a while, enjoyed it for a while, and then said, okay, I'm done. And I sold it for $400. So that was the highest sale ever through my eBay account. But the second highest sale came just a few weeks ago. I picked up at my favorite charity used book sale a set of the Narnia books, the C.S. Lewis Narnia books, and they were published by the Folio Society. And the Folio Society publishes very beautiful, beautiful books, often in sets and slipcases, almost always leather bound, always a BOLO. And I almost never find them. And this was sitting on the shelf at the book sale for a couple hours after it started. Nobody picked them up. I saw them. I couldn't believe they were still there. $7 for the set, and I sold them for $350.
Wow. Good.
And that's my best sale ever. But I have something up for sale now that I'm very excited about. Last spring, I was at a yard sale and somebody had 2 pairs of these old light fixtures, and they are like Liberace ugly. They're beaded and crystal and Hollywood Regency, and they're just ugly, but they're very complicated. 2 pairs of them, and they said that they had come out of their grandmother's house and they had seen them there in the 70s, but they didn't know if they were older. And they wanted $20 for all 4 of them, plus some light bulbs thrown in. And I talked them down to 15. I've since sold the light bulbs for 25, so I'm ahead on that game. And I have the first pair listed. And after I did my research, I listed the first pair for $1,200.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And I think I'll probably get at least 750. And then I can't decide if I want to put the second pair up now in case somebody's looking for 4 or not. But they're going to be a bear to ship. I talked to my UPS store guy and he told me, what I need to do to make sure they ship safely. And the box itself is going to cost me $25, but that's okay on that big of a sale. But I'm really excited about those, and it's probably long tail, but there's a history of a couple light fixtures that are not identical, but very, very similar, selling for very high prices. So I'm pretty excited about that.
That sounds amazing. What decade do you think they're from?
The ones that were listed in Terapeak and Worth Point were saying that they were antique from the early 1900s. I don't know. I don't know how to date them. I've done research. They're wired for electricity, so I don't think they're antique unless they were wired later. But we'll find out. But I'm pretty excited about those.
It sounds like something from the Gilded Age, just completely ostentatious and gaudy and just excess. Right. But, that's a perfect item to be a prop in a movie or TV show or whatever, because that's a big industry out there and they go on eBay to look for what they need. And I'm hearing that they don't even negotiate. They just buy it because time is money. And when they find what they're looking for, they just buy it because they don't want to go back and forth and try to get the seller down on price. It's like, we need that. We're buying it.
Yes. I had a pair of beautiful hand-sewn pillowcases that were antique. I didn't have a real high price on them, maybe $40. And someone from the Gilded Age that knew the guy that did
that is right. That is a new show. The guy that did Down Abbey in the Gilded Age.
So the set designer bought them. So I need to subscribe to HBO Max now and look at the show to see if my pillowcases show up.
Oh, right. Isn't that fun?
Yeah.
Okay. That is going to be a bear to ship, but like you said,
it'll be worth it.
For the price, you just sometimes you just do things because it's worth it in the end.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about books.
Let's.
One thing that fascinates me that you do is you have the patience to wait until you get everything in a collection or a series. So I'm just envisioning your storage area with all these little piles of okay, I have 3 of that one. I have 5 of that one. And you keep track of what you need to complete the set. Do you have a process for that?
I do. I have bins with that every bin is labeled. So it might be Diary of a Wimpy Kid, or it might be, Robin Carr's Virgin River. And so I just throw it into those bins and I keep track, on a Word document of everything that's in inventory. Anytime I go thrifting or to a book sale, I take that printed document with me to make sure I don't buy things I don't need. And then when I have a set or a near complete set, I'll sell it. But having said that, I've seen the price really dropping in 2 years for things that I used to get more money for. So 2 years ago, a Harry Potter set hardcover would easily make me $65, $70. Now I'm lucky to get 40. And some other ones have fallen in price as well. So I think I'm going to not do that as much. I'm trying to really be more thoughtful about building lots and not necessarily letting it stretch out over 18 months, because then you kind of lose momentum on them and the price might fall. So my new strategy is if I find a set books that have most of them, I'll buy it. But if it's only one or two, I'm not going to start a new set with that, even though in the past I know the whole set has sold, because there's getting to be too many books in my house. So
yeah, I can imagine it would pile up, and now you have all these incomplete sets that
yes.
For me, I would be so frustrated, like, oh, I just need one more to complete that set. And it just never pops up, or it takes a long time to pop up. But
Yes.
I think that takes a lot of patience.
Yes. And I know that I have a lot to learn, because some sales that you go to, and by the way, if anybody wants to get into selling books, go to booksalefinder.com, and it will tell you all the book sales in your area and when they are. But some book sales will have a dealer only period sale before they open to the public, and you pay extra to get into them.
Mm-hmm.
And I have always found them to be worth it. And those are anywhere from $30 to $50 usually to pay to get into the early one. But I go to those and I see dealers go in, they pay the $50 entry fee, and they only come out with one box of books. So you know that every book in there is valuable if they have the cost of the books plus 50 into it. So I need to learn how to do more of that and find those. And I'm getting a little bit better at it. But when I first started, I just had the supply and the source, and I knew I could get the sets, or mostly sets, cheaply, or build sets cheaply. So that's how I started.
And I would think it's like any other category. The more you do it, the more repeats you see, like, oh yeah, I sold that one.
Exactly.
And you just automatically know, you don't have to think. You start recognizing what you've sold before. We do have friends of the library in our county, and they only do a book sale. I think it's every 6 months.
Yeah.
And I used to donate books to the library for that purpose, to make money for them. But back in the day, I sold books on Amazon when all of that started, and everybody was running around with a scanner in the thrift store, and that was the thing. And I would go to those library sales, and as a Friends of the Library member, which is like $25 a year, you got to go on the first day.
Yeah.
Nice. You got preferential treatment. But what would happen is all these seriously out for blood booksellers would be in there tag teaming. Maybe there's 4 people together, and they're just one guy standing in the corner with a box, and they're literally throwing stuff across the room to their teammate to, we want this one. And it was brutal. And it was like, this isn't even fun. And I don't think they allow that anymore. It just got really out of control. But I was just like, I am not aggressive enough to do that. I don't want to do that. I think it's, as we say in the South, tacky. Just go in and look and see what you can find. And let's not, monopolize the whole book sale. Because
and the thing with the scanner people too is a lot of them are on very tight margins. So if they know they can make $3 on a book, but they're going to be selling bazillions of them, that's what they'll do. That's not my business model, obviously, and so I will sometimes use the eBay app to check a barcode, but I don't scan books.
Well, and here's the thing with any device, any technology, it can only understand what you put into it. Right. So, these scanners, maybe that's the price of the book at this moment, but tomorrow it might be different.
Yeah.
And, it doesn't tell you whether or not to buy it. It just gives you data on that book, in my case, on Amazon, and, how many are on there, and this thing called sales rank and all this information. And if you don't know how to interpret the information, that scanner is useless. So I'm with you on the human brain is the best decision-making device we have.
Yes.
Because you remember that you've sold this before, or that author, or that genre, or whatever it is. A scanner's not going to tell you all that.
And something in the back of your brain says, just look this one up.
Yeah, there's that thing called intuition that tells you what to do. And in my case, like when I listen to that, things turn out well.
Yes.
Like you just know. It's just the knowing, and you can't explain it if people are new to this or they don't get it. But there's just things in life that you just immediately know.
Yes.
So like cursive writing is going to be a thing in a few years. I'm not playing the lottery or gambling or anything. I just like to think about, what might be happening with that? But
yeah. The other thing I've learned about books just in the past year is how valuable some paperbacks can be. That was not even on my radar. I was only selling hardcover books for the first 2 years. And then I just, at my favorite charity used book sale, I hit an amazing haul of Dragonlance fantasy paperbacks, 130 of them. So I paid $1 a volume and I probably made $1,500 off that lot.
oh, nice.
It was someone's private collection. Most of it was like new, all paperback. And that really tuned me into, paperbacks. So I have since sold, paperbacks from other series. Most of it is fantasy, sci-fi. That seems to be where the collectors are for paperback books. And a lot of them are in really rough shape, but they'll still sell if there's certain editions or certain sets. I sold a set of some, I think it was from the 70s and 1970s, 7 paperback book series for $175. Wow. That's insane to me. So, paperbacks can make you a lot of money.
And what it all boils down to is it's just paper.
Yeah.
It's not gold. It's not silver. It's not like a rare shark tooth. It's just paper.
And it, you hear with books that condition is everything. And it is pretty important for a lot of books, but for some, it's not for the paperbacks from the past 50 years. That condition may not be as important. You'll still get good money. I mean, you won't get the best, but you'll still get good money.
Well, and you mentioned Virgin River a few minutes ago. Do you find that when books are made into TV series or movies that the books then become more valuable?
Yes.
People want to read the book first, like,
Yes.
I've seen this ad for Virgin River and there's book series, so I want to read that first.
Yes, I've sold Virgin River 3 times. The first 2 times for 150, and the third time the price dropped a little down to the lower hundreds. But yeah, and Bridgerton, I could not get a complete set, so I sold what I had, and that did really well. Dune did phenomenally well because the Dune movie just came out.
The Handmaid's Tale.
Yeah, I haven't. That hasn't. I mean, because that's not a set.
Right. So, okay.
Yeah. So if you could find a first edition, yeah, you'd do well. But good luck with that.
Yeah, I did try to watch that series. It was a little too
it's rough.
Called dystopian.
Yeah. And I love that stuff.
But it was like I just didn't like the way the women were treated. So
well, you know what Margaret Atwood, the author, said was, she said that everything she portrayed in her story has actually happened in various times in history and in various cultures. So you can't say it couldn't happen because it has. So anyway. But but no, that was not really a good candidate because it wasn't a series of books.
Okay, so you're right.
Sort of the sweet spot, at least in my business model for the books, has been I build the series of things that aren't really being printed now, that are sort of out of print or over the past few years because nobody else wants to assemble them. And if you go buy them all new on Amazon, you're going to pay way more. So that's served me pretty well, that business model. But like I said, I'm starting to be a little more discriminating about how I approach that.
Well, I did see on the Money Making Mondays, I think it was on the $100 thread, somebody sold a set of Little House on the Prairie books from the 50s.
I saw it. I was jealous.
I know they were in great condition. They had the dust jackets, and she said, I think it was missing one. So she went on eBay and bought that one. Yes. And I'm sorry, I cannot remember the person's name. So I'm sorry about that. But,
I was so jealous.
He bought that one and made the complete set, and then had it and sold it for over $100.
And I've done that.
What a treasure, because I loved those books growing up. They
are great.
I mean, what a nerdy little kid I was, 4th and 5th, 6th grade, just reading those books.
Yeah.
And then the TV show came out and I was addicted to that. And I wanted to be Laura Ingalls for Halloween every week.
So did I. Totally. Absolutely.
But I love that Laura Ingalls Wilder didn't start writing until she was 65.
I know. Isn't that great? And her daughter, Rose Wilder Lane, is the one that got her into it.
Yeah.
Rose was a journalist.
I love that story. And it gives you sort of hope that, when you're older, you can start something. You don't have to have been a writer your whole life. And I think she just maybe kept journals, or she just thought about her childhood, and look what an empire that created for her. I love her story.
Yes, we all do. I mean, what's not to love? Yeah.
I know. Everybody wants to be a little girl pioneer running around in those cute clothes. So I remember when I was selling books, sometimes I would find treasures inside. Have you found any treasures in your books?
I found the sweetest love note from the girl next door to a young man in Vietnam. And it was dated, I think it was 1968. And I don't know if they were romantically involved, or she had a crush on him, or she was just trying to boost his morale. But it was literally the girl next door. It was the absolute sweetest note I ever read. So sometimes I'll find sweet little notes like that in them, and I really like those. But I've never found money.
Well, and that's shocking, because people do use money for bookmarks. Or I found a book one time, it was brand new. It was something that was popular at the time, like The Pilot's Wife or something like that. And you could tell it was brand new. The spine had never been cracked. And I always page through, like flip through and make sure there's nothing stuck in there, because you don't want something gross to be in there and your buyer's like, ew, because I found stuff like Kleenexes and gross things. But it was two $50 bills and a little like index card size thing, happy birthday, blah, blah, blah. And the person never opened it.
Oh, no.
And I was like, oh, happy birthday to me.
and the person that gave it to them never got a thank you for it.
No. So the lessons here are, when you're selling books, always look through them thoroughly, because anything could be in there. And the second thing is, if you ever get a book as a gift, even if you're not a reader, at least page through it, flip through it, so that you can see if anything's stuck in there.
And don't put things in books. My husband, bought a book for each of our kids for Christmas, and he was going to put a little cash or a check, I forget which, in there with it. And I said, don't. I said, if they don't crack that book, they're not going to know that's there. Don't do it. Give it to them separately. So
right. Yeah. Number 3 is just don't put things in books.
Yeah.
Okay. Shipping the large sets of things. That seems like a lot of work, and it's very heavy.
Yes, it is heavy. And I'm 60 years old, and I'm starting to think, oh, these books are so heavy. Do I want to keep doing this? What I have found is that if I have a really heavy set of books, like more than 30 pounds, I'm starting to split it into 2 boxes. Mm-hmm. And I learned that the hard way, because I shipped a lot of 20 Baptist hymnals in a box, and it weighed 43 pounds.
Didn't you post that one? That sounds familiar.
I'm sure I did. I did. But what happened was the post office dropped it. And the buyer got only some of the books in the box, and the rest of the box was crushed. And I'd cut them a special deal, and it was for under $100, and I won't insure media mail unless it's over $100. So I had to eat that. And I'm sure it had to do with the weight. If you're dropping that heavy a box, it even though it was tightly packed, it's just not going to do well. So I've started breaking boxes into shipments into smaller boxes if they start to get pretty heavy.
Do you offer more than just media mail?
I do. I offer UPS Ground. I was doing FedEx for a while, but I wasn't real happy with them. So I've moved to UPS Ground as an alternative, or certainly Priority if they want it. Some books can go first class. If it's a really expensive book, like a $100 Stephen King, I'll just give them a free upgrade to Priority, because might as well do that rather than buy insurance on it.
Yeah, so, I rarely use Parcel Select unless it can't go any other way, like fragrances or something hazmat, because I have a few books out there, but some people want it tomorrow. They want it to give it as a gift. They don't want to wait the 2 to 3 weeks it's going to take on media mail. And you said media mail does not come with insurance.
Correct.
That's another reason I don't use Parcel Select or media mail, is because I'd rather pay an extra couple dollars and it's never even that much. It's maybe
Right.
$1, and then you get that USPS insurance on it.
Yes.
So,
But by the way, a lot of times if you go ship through via pirate ship, insurance is
yes.
cheaper. So,
Yes, and I that was going to be my next statement was
yeah.
always check pirate ship because they're cheaper too. But that's one of the reasons I got out of the book business was it just I'm so all or nothing sometimes. You know, it's like it was just it got to be exhausting. Just, you know, buying the books, you got to put them in your cart, you take them to the checkout, you got to put them on the checkout thing. You got to put them in your car. You got to take them out of your car. You got to bring them in. You got to work on them, blah, blah, blah. And, you know, I just kind of backed off on that. Also, the grocery business was picking up on Amazon. So I got into that more. But if you're like me and it's like all or nothing, no, like you can cherry pick. You know, I look for the leather Bibles. I look for pop-up books. I look for sets like the you know, Clifford the dog, the children's sets when they're all together like that. I look for box sets. Now you mentioned Stephen King. What should we be looking for there?
I'm not really sure. I actually have a Stephen King section in my store. I just look up every Stephen King I come to, and I always put it up high in the comps, and I always end up having to drop the price. I just think that really fluctuates a lot. So, I mean, obviously, if you see a paperback copy of Rage by Richard Bachman, buy that because that was his pseudonym, and there were only very few copies printed, and it's worth a ton of money. And most Stephen King collectors know that. But other than that, you're just gonna have to check because that price fluctuates a lot.
Okay. Now, for people like me that are just kind of skimming bookshelves, like things that jump out at you, I don't look at every single book. I'm not interested in that. It just seems boring to me.
Yeah.
But, you know, I like to know in each section of the thrift store or estate sale or whatever, what should we be looking for that doesn't require you to look at every book, you know, pull it off the shelf and look through it. I mean, obviously leather bound Bibles are easy to see.
Yep.
What are some other things like that?
Well, you mentioned them a moment ago, complete sets of things or near complete sets, box sets. And then look for, there's a couple of publishers to look for. The Folio Society, I had mentioned that was my Narnia set. They typically come with a slip case, so they stand out pretty well. And sometimes it's a single volume, sometimes it's multiple volumes of a set. Easton Press, and you will know them because they will look so high quality, leather bound, gold on the spine. Oftentimes you open them up and it's watered silk end papers. They're absolutely beautiful. Franklin Press is similar to Easton Press, but not quite as lucrative, but that's also still very good. And you'll just see the quality. You very seldom find them at thrift stores, although I have. But those are, I mean, those three publishers, Folio, Easton, and Franklin, always a BOLO.
Okay, what about coffee table books? Are there any that are worth anything?
There are, but I don't know the category. I actually, every now and then I'll look through a subcategory of books on the solds and just try to get a general idea of what's selling. And I remember a couple months ago going through coffee table books and just trying to pick up on it. But every one I look up isn't worth anything. So I'm sure they're out there. I just don't know them.
Yeah, I feel that. When I was heavy into books, it was like the Reader's Digest condensed books. They're not usually worth anything.
Oh, you can.
Everybody had those in their house, you know. Encyclopedias, I see people selling that, but I just think, oh, that's just so heavy. That's just going to be a lot, and it takes up a lot of room.
I have a set. I've had for coming up on 3 years. I got as part of a huge estate bundle, and it is a macropedia and a micropedia. So, golly, I think there must be over 20 volumes there. I boxed them up and shoved them on a shelf. I know that if I put them on eBay, I'll do better, but I just don't want to deal with it. And I don't want to put them local because I won't get much money. So I'm sort of in paralysis analysis on that.
Wondering who buys encyclopedias, because I always try to think about my buyer and what do they want and why are they buying this?
Yeah.
And I don't know, I don't have any information on who buys encyclopedias because everything is virtual. You can just get online and find anything that you want. But I remember as a kid, and this is another nerdy kid thing, I used to just sit there and look at the encyclopedia. I just pick one and just, the pictures were pretty and, some country you've never heard of. Like I'd look at the Y and the Z to like, what words even start with those letters?
Yep.
And then my little sister came along and cut pictures out of them for her school report.
Oh my gosh. I bet your mom was mad.
What was that?
I bet your mom was mad.
Yeah, she got away with everything because she was the youngest. But yeah, y'all older kids have seen everything. It's okay if she cuts it out. But I did do that. And I was like, and I used to love libraries. I still do. Libraries and bookstores. Just, I walk through there. It's like, oh, there's so much knowledge in here. I can pick out anything I want and learn something new.
Yes.
And when my kids were little and driving me crazy, this is a nerdy thing, I would either go to a bookstore or the library. It was so quiet in there. And you could just, they had magazines, newspapers, books, anything you wanted. And I used to take my kids to a used bookstore. It was in Chattanooga, Tennessee. I think it was called McKay's. And you could trade. So we would take books they'd read that weren't like sentimental, they weren't like my Richard Scarry books from when I was little. And then they could pick out more, and it was, it was free because you're trading in. And it was like, when you're poor and that's what we did because money was tight. I was a stay-at-home mom then. And, they would come home with all these books that they hadn't read before, read those for a few weeks and go back and do it again. So it was kind of like the library, but
that's
you
great.
weren't under the restriction of a return date.
Right.
So, I just love books, and it's like, I need to do more of that, but I get to that section in the thrift store and I just feel overwhelmed. Like either I'm going to have to look through every single thing or just learn more about what jumps out and choose that.
Yeah.
Do you do any homeschool materials?
I haven't come across many. I did find 5 copies of a math series for 4th graders at a thrift store a couple months ago, and they haven't moved at all. So, I just don't come across them. And I'm hoping the ones I got, I can get rid of, but.
Oh, what are those books written by the Appalachian Mountain people or about them? The
Foxfire.
Foxfire. Yeah. Those were part of a college project or something where they went out and interviewed all of these people that, they were mountain people. They were off the grid people about how they made soap and how they, cooked in their Dutch oven in the ground and just all these life skills. Have you ever come across any of those?
I found 3 of them at a thrift store last year and promptly sold them. And then I have books 1 and 2 sitting in a bin in my inventory room. And I kind of want to get a few more before I put that one up for sale. But boy, to find a complete set of those, that's worth a lot of money.
Yeah, I found some of those once and it wasn't a complete set. I think it was 8 volumes.
But you probably did really well with it.
I did. This was, I was helping a Humane Society thrift store. I was selling their stuff and they were paying me like consignment. And I learned so much doing that because I didn't have to buy anything. I could just look up their stuff. And I was fascinated by the information in those books. It's just how to live off the grid, basically, how people lived over 100 years ago and you had to do everything for yourself. You didn't have all these stores everywhere and cars and all that stuff. It was just a fascinating thing to look at. And I think today, now with having been through COVID lockdown and people intentionally living off the grid, there is a demand for those.
Well, a year or two ago, I found some books, and they were not the Foxfire, but they were like how to trap and hunt and fish and how to dig a well. And they were like 4 really thin paperback books. And I put them together in a lot and threw it up for, I don't know, $35-$40, and they were cheap, and that sold like right overnight. So yeah. So that stuff is probably still in demand. I just don't find it that often.
Yeah, that's true. And then magazines are surprisingly valuable. Have you sold any of those? Yeah.
Yes, I have. I haven't. The most valuable ones I sold were my son's Nintendo Power magazines. I think he had like 5 years worth, and I broke them into 2 lots, and I ended up with like $150 all in for them. Those were the most lucrative. And then I was at an estate sale a couple years ago and found 15 years worth of Alaska magazine from the late 50s to the early 70s.
Wow.
I paid $10 for all of them. And I've sold, I think, and I divided them up by year. And I think I've sold like 2/3 of those lots, and I still have a few stragglers, but I got anywhere from $15 to $30 a lot. So they did well. I sold some quilting magazines, but I have another chunk of those, and they're not moving. My husband culled out his old Civil War magazines, and I sold those, and they did all right. So I haven't come across any of the really, really valuable ones, but I know they're out there.
Yeah, and there's certain editions, like somebody's on the cover,
Right.
or there's some article inside. It just depends on what it is. But I don't see very many of those in my thrift stores.
No, these are flea market finds or estate sale finds. I don't think you're going to see them in a thrift store. They're going to throw those out.
Yeah, and it's the more unusual, the better. It's just
Right.
like anything else. The less there is of something, the more it's worth. So just because it doesn't mean anything to you, like Alaska magazine, who would think?
Right.
But it's probably not in print anymore.
It's not.
Yeah. So
I think you say tarot. I did, and I found them at a yard sale, got all excited. I counted them. They were all there, paid $2 for them. And then I got home and I turned them over, and I had not looked at the backs, and the backs had notes in marker on every single one. I was like, drat. So I think I finally sold them for like $23 or something. But if they hadn't been marked, they would have been well over that. So I was bummed, but learned my lesson, check both sides of the card.
would you see that kind of thing at a book sale, like a library book sale?
I don't think so. A friend of mine, I recently turned her on to selling on eBay, and she lives in a different state from me. And she finds really good stuff on Facebook Marketplace. So somebody was selling a bundle of, I don't know how many decks of old vintage tarot cards, like, I don't know, I want to say like 8 or 10 decks. And she paid $100 for it, and she's made $800 back.
Wow.
Yeah. So, she just got a couple high value decks in that lot, and the person just needed money and didn't know what they were worth. So yeah, so she did really well with them.
Sometimes I think on things like that, people who have extra money just buy things at a super high price for bragging rights. Like, oh, these were so hard to find. I had to pay $800 on eBay to get them,
I don't know. I think people just want it. They want it, so.
Yeah. I mean, it's an item is worth what someone will pay at that moment.
That's right.
That's right. Well, you have been a wealth of information. I appreciate you sharing all these important details
Sure.
so that everybody can leverage that section of the thrift store or garage sale. I would think garage sales is where you're going to find those odd items, the magazines you've never heard of, the auto repair manuals, even the Lego instruction booklets.
Yeah.
Those will sell.
I would say some of the more exciting treasures I've found have all been estate or yard sale finds. And nothing in particular comes to mind, but that's always going to be in my rotation because that's when people have had stuff in their basement forever and bring it out and they just want it gone. Like those fancy light fixtures I was telling you about, that's where you're going to find things that nobody else has picked over. It's kind of fresh on the market. That's, I think, where the most exciting stuff can be found.
Well, and I think by the time it goes through the thrift store process of being dumped in a bin and sorted and thrown around, and then it gets to the shelf and it's not in that great of condition. The cover's ripped or pages are missing or whatever. And the few people I have helped clean out their house when a loved one has died or they're moving or whatever, that's where you see those pristine items like, magazines from the 60s that have just been sitting there.
Yes.
Now, I will say that Time and Life magazines, I've never had any success selling those. I think there's just too many of them.
Yeah, I think it's Life. I have the 1971 Disney World issue when they opened, and last year was the 50th anniversary, and they were selling left and right on eBay, and mine sat all year and still hasn't sold. And I don't get that. So, I tweaked the listings, ended it, sold similar, nothing. So,
and catalogs too. We've talked about Sears catalogs, Penny's catalogs. This year, 2022 is the 20th anniversary of Victoria's Secret Pink.
Wow.
That line, which was developed for preteen and teenagers so they could transition them into the regular Victoria's Secret, like get them as a customer when they're young and they'll be a customer forever kind of thing. But if any of those catalogs are around, or even like the ones you get in the mail that, you don't even subscribe to, it's just junk mail. Some of that stuff might be valuable this year because it's their 20th anniversary.
20 years isn't that long ago.
I know.
I know. I'm like, really? That's valuable?
But I've seen things like old LL Bean catalogs and mailers and sale flyers and stuff like that sell just because it has the vintage clothing on it and people collect them.
Yeah.
And it's all about the nostalgia and remembering that. So it's like anything is fair game in the books, magazine, media department. It's just, do you have the patience to look through everything?
Right.
Well, and you mentioned you sell on consignment sometimes.
Every now and then I do some volunteer work and they get donations in. So if they get a book in that might be valuable, I'll sell it for them because they're a good organization. So, but I don't do consignment with anybody else. I'm so not interested in that. What is your
threshold for valuable to sell on consignment?
I do a 50-50 split with them, and I want it to be worth $75 or more. And honestly, if it's $75, by the time you take out eBay fees and everything, I'm maybe getting 30. So it's more a labor of love for a good organization than it is really a moneymaker for me. And I don't do it that often. So
I thought you were going to say like $200.
No, I'm a softie. What can I say?
Well, and books are pretty easy to list.
Yes.
It's not like clothing where you have to wash it and put it on a mannequin and take all the measurements. It's just take pictures of it. And listeners, always, if it's used, take your own pictures. Don't use stock photos because you want that buyer to see, the bottom of this cover is ripped and the spine is cracked and there's highlighting or whatever's going on in the book.
Yes.
You definitely want to show your own pictures because every book of that title or whatever is going to be in different condition if it's used.
And I have a very systematic list of the shots I get for every book and book lot so that every flaw is shown. Because I actually bought some books at one of those local online auctions a few months ago, and the pictures looked great. It was a very expensive lot, and I went to pick them up and my heart sank because everything they hadn't shown in the pictures was in horrible condition. So I emailed the auction owner and I said, I've bought from you before and I've never been disappointed, but I am very disappointed. Is there anything you can do for me? And they gave me back the auction fee, which was something. But I spent $250 on the lot, should have been able to sell it for $800. I actually just sold it. But after fees and everything else, I'll maybe make $30. So I won't take a loss on it, but I will never buy books online again like that. I'm always going to have to look at it before I buy it. So that was a hard lesson to learn because the shots they took looked good, but they weren't as extensive as mine.
Right.
And an online auction company, they're just trying to move through a ton of stuff. So they don't know all the nuances of what you want to see. And I didn't expect to have to ask because I figured, they were honest. So that was not a good experience.
Returns. Do you get many book returns from eBay buyers?
I've gotten 2. One was a Harry Potter book, first book club edition, and the buyer sent it back and said, doesn't seem authentic. And all I could think of was, who's gonna do a knockoff Harry Potter book? That didn't make, but fine, gave them their money back. And then the other one was a Stephen King book that had a dust jacket, and that was my fault. I had missed some damage underneath. So, that was an item not as described, and that was all on me. But those are the only 2 books I've ever gotten back, and I've sold, hundreds and hundreds of them. So
for the listeners, books are a low return category.
Yes, they are.
We're getting a lot of returns, which I admit clothing is the highest return percentage of any category, but I just can't pull myself away from it.
And I really don't like selling clothing, but I sell a little bit. I just sold if it's vintage or really special, I just sold an amazing 1960s dress and coat set. I think I put it in the $100 thread. I bought it for $5 at a yard sale. It was somebody selling them that they were involved with the high school drama department. And I think I got $225 on that. I listed it really, really high, like at $450, and I took an offer of $225. And then from the same yard sale, I got a dress that I just sold yesterday, and I called it a Carol Brady dress because it was from the 70s. And those yellow, orange, green colors. That went for $30. And then I picked up a load of vintage slips at an estate sale, probably paid a little too much for them, and I'm working my way through them. And I think I would do that again. That's something that I now know what to look for. Doesn't look that hard, but I haven't sold a lot of clothes. Those are just, I only sell a few, and those are them pretty much. And I go in a thrift store, and I always look for the Coogi. I don't know how you say that, the sweaters. I always look for the Daisy Kingdom dresses or the circle dresses. I haven't found any yet, but something easy to spot, that it would jump out at me. And if I find them, great. And those would be worth selling, but I don't want to deal with the things that are, $30 here, $40 there. That's measuring, washing. Nah, not fun.
Yeah, I'm transitioning to that. It takes a while to transition and to leave things behind that you can sell. But time is money. So it takes.
But let me say a word about that. Absolutely, it is so worth it to learn how to leave things behind and get more expensive things. Because when I started selling in 2019, my average sale was $30, and now it's $48.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's a big jump in 3 years, and I want to just keep track of that and keep trying to push that upwards. So leave that old stuff, but leave the cheap stuff behind, because it really will start to make a difference over time. And I've seen my income go up, and I mean, it's just, you get way better at it as time goes on.
And you will always find more.
Yeah.
So it's not there. Like you have to take those lower dollar items because, well, I mean, it depends on your location. I get it that some people don't have access to a lot, or they buy a lot of things at one time because they do have a stockpile because of weather issues, or they're a caregiver and they can't get out. And so there's all kinds of reasons, but if you have the luxury of being a cherry picker, that's great. Right. You mentioned the Carol Brady dress or nightgown or whatever.
Yep.
I found one the other day that I swear my mother had, and it was a Vanity Fair velour zip up robe. And it's like color block. And I'm like, I know my mother had this. And I looked at
I had one. I lived in Pennsylvania, 5 minutes from the Vanity Fair outlets.
Oh, really?
I grew up on Vanity Fair. And I'll tell you, I think just the whole category of the 70s in general, I have my eyes peeled because as a tablecloth collector, it was all about the 50s. But I just see sort of the whole demographic moving later in time. And the things I see now from the 70s are, the light fixtures and the Sears catalogs and the clothing and the household goods, the toys. I just think that is a category that is, I think it's going to get even bigger than it is now.
The brass stuff and the teak wood stuff and the wooden mid-century modern home decor stuff that I wasn't even looking at a year ago. And it's like, okay, this is, I found a brass, I don't know if you'd put it on your door, you put it by your door. It's very heavy. It's an oval, like 7x9. It says welcome with the pineapples on it. And it has a little thing you hang, and you could put it in your garden. You could put it by your door.
Yes.
And I saw that and I grabbed it, and I think I have $69 on it. It was $3, super easy to ship. It'll fit in a padded flat rate. I'll wrap it in bubble wrap.
Yeah. So that's kind of what I'm keeping my eyes peeled for now when I go to estate sales and occasionally thrift stores and yard sales is the 70s stuff, because I think that is really going to pop.
Yeah. But back to that velour robe. Yeah, I sure enough looked at the tag. It was Vanity Fair, made in the USA. And I didn't even look it up. I just grabbed it. I think I have 49 on it. So,
and the Vanity Fair slips and nightgowns also will go.
And my grandmother used to send us girls, I have two sisters, Vanity Fair, nightgowns, pajama stuff when we were teenagers, like the pretty, like what I Dream of Jeannie would wear, the long, flowy nylon with the pretty embroidery. And it just made me feel so grown up and beautiful to wear. Of course, no one saw me wearing it. I'm just wearing it at night.
It's about you, not about who sees it.
Yeah. And so she used to send those to us girls, and I just loved getting that birthday present. I just knew it was going to be something beautiful because she had beautiful taste, and she had nice stores to shop in and all that kind of stuff. And that's when somebody mailed you a birthday present, Right.
So bathrobes and nightgowns, I think, are a category. I wouldn't hate selling those like I would other clothes, because they somehow seem easier to me. So,
and they're usually cheap. Goodwill's figured out they can put $25 on a nice coat, or I don't know if they get that price or eventually it goes on sale, but the pajamas are usually less than $4. So it's an overlooked category, but they do sell.
Yeah. And also old vintage pantyhose still in the package.
I look for those too.
Yeah. Sometimes you get those, depending on the thrift store, like 50 cents if it's a small independent thrift store, and you can flip those, for a decent return.
And they're easy to ship and small and don't take up much space, and easy to photograph because they're in the package. The final question is, what kind of advice would you give to new people or those struggling? And you've only been selling since 2019. So you've come a long way in a short time.
Yeah. A couple things. I would say periodically, just for fun, pick a category and study the solds on it. So like for me last week, it was, I don't know anything about gardening books. So I went and looked up gardening books in the sold category, and I noticed certain titles popping up again and again as fairly valuable. So now I'll know to look for those. So you could do that with any category. If you're going to an estate sale and you can see the pictures and something looks interesting, but you don't know anything about it, start looking at the solds and learning about that so that you have more information when you go. I would say the other thing is get to know your performance tab in your eBay hub, and learn those numbers and keep track of those numbers and watch them, because they will tell you a lot over time about how you're doing, and it will help you set goals and maybe, plug some holes, that kind of thing.
Yeah, I like that performance tab because you can see what you're doing right.
Yes.
And you can do more of it, and you can see what, no, that's not working for me. I'm going to move away from that.
Yes.
Okay. Well, this has been fun and educational because everybody has a different experience and everyone has wisdom about a different part of doing eBay. So I appreciate you sharing all of your book knowledge.
I love books. What can I say? I'm happy to share.
Are you going to a book sale today?
I am not. I am actually trying not to buy so many books and starting to, try and plump up my other categories. But tomorrow it's day 3 of an estate sale in a very packed house. And it's a company that sometimes on day 3 will do fill a bag. So I'm just going to go see if I can find anything. And if I can't, it's recreation. But I expect to come home with some good finds.
Excellent. Well, thanks again for agreeing to come on and being brave enough to talk on a podcast. I appreciate that. It's sometimes hard to get guests to come on because they don't like their voice, or they feel like they're not going to have anything to say. Or one answer I get is, "Oh, I'm not interesting enough," and it's like everyone is interesting.
That's true. And we all hate the sound of our own voice when we hear it. So I mean, just get over that.
Well, and once you start talking about eBay, because everyone on that Facebook group or that sells on eBay is passionate about it, or they wouldn't be doing it. So
right.
Thanks for sharing your wisdom, and we will see you on the group.
Okay, take care. Bye-bye.
Okay, bye. That was great. Thank you so much, Eileen, for agreeing to come on and share your wisdom. And thank you, listeners, for tuning in. I really appreciate you. Contact me anytime. My contact information is below the podcast. I'm here for you. I'll be back next week with another seller and an interesting chat to help you with your eBay business. Bye.